Devon Cone is the senior advocate for women and girls at Refugees International. She joins me now from the U.S. city of Denver. Devon, as you know, we've seen more than 3.6 million Ukrainians already flee the country. What are the challenges ahead for these refugees and the countries that will take them in?
Well, just like you said, I mean, 3.6 million. I think we need to stay on that number for a minute, given the fact that that's happened and 3.6 million have left Ukraine just in a month. So first of all, as your previous reporting showed, they need mental health support. They need psychosocial support. They need to be, have warm beds and bus tickets onward, but also need, long-term help, with their mental needs and mental health care, but also with integrating into these new countries that they're going to. Again, the warm reception in Poland and other neighboring countries and even throughout the EU has been quite remarkable, but there's a long road ahead for both the refugees themselves and the hosting countries and communities.
The U.S. says it will take in up to 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. That's just a small number, but how will it prioritize who to take?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, what we understand is they're going to prioritize people with family ties in the U.S., which makes sense and helps with the integration process. The administration is also going to use all means possible to get people, resettled and relocated to the U.S. So various legal pathways, visas, humanitarian parole, the refugee resettlement program. But it is a small number in the large scheme of things for Ukrainian refugees. But I will say that it's a pretty big number given what the U.S. has committed to in the past and what the U.S. has been able to actually resettle, the numbers they've actually been able to resettle. I will say that, it's important to note that over the last years, the refugee resettlement program has been really remarkably, I wouldn't say decimated, but it's been understaffed and underutilized and under-resourced. And so they really need to, up the significant resources that they give to the U.S. refugee admissions program so that they can really accept Ukrainian refugees in a dignified and organized fashion.
The U.S. is also pledging more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance. Do you know how that money will be distributed and what's most critical?
Well, they indicate that it's going to be distributed in a lot of ways. One of the ways that I find most important, given that I work on issues of women and girls, is that they're going to use some of that money to respond to and mitigate and deal with gender-based violence and human trafficking, which are risks that increase in displacement. They're also going to provide they're going to address the urgent needs that are inside Ukraine, which are really important. Medical care, resources, all sorts of supplies. And they already have humanitarian response teams. The U.S. government has sent a humanitarian response team to Ukraine and to the region to help identify these needs. So they're going to use those teams on the ground to help identify what's needed and help distribute that.
What's your biggest concern as this conflict drags on and we see more people continue to be displaced? Because it's not just the people who fled Ukraine, but there's millions more who are internally displaced.
Exactly. I think that's one of the things we're most concerned about is both the people that are internally displaced and also the ability for aid agencies to get the needed resources to them. From what I understand and from the people I've talked to and Ukrainian families I know, many of the people who have been left behind or who have decided to stay are elderly people or people with disabilities or people with extra needs that are important. The other thing that I am very concerned about, and we at Refugees International are concerned about, is the negative consequences throughout the world and globally. We're already seeing food prices increase, obviously oil and gas prices increase given what's happening and the Russia's war in Ukraine. But I think that, first and foremost, Ukrainian IDPs, internally displaced people inside the country, and refugees outside the country need to be assisted and welcomed. And then we also need to be aware that there are going to be long-term and far-reaching effects in other countries that are really struggling as well and have their own humanitarian crises.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Devon Cone joining us from Denver. Thank you.
Thank you.